Just hours away now from Donald Trump's first State of the Union address, and it's been overshadowed by more chaos in Washington. In a sudden and surprising move, FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe has stepped down. He's been a constant target of President Trump ever since he briefly took over for the ousted FBI Director James Comey. That was back in May.
Then there is this. House Republicans voted to release a controversial classified memo alleging the FBI misused a surveillance program in relation to the Trump campaign. Democrats claim the memo misrepresents intelligence in order to discredit the FBI and Special Counsel Robert Mueller's Russia probe.
Sadly, we can fully expect that the President of the United States will not put the national interest over his own personal interest. This committee voted to put the President's personal interest, perhaps their own political interest, above the national interest, in denying themselves even the ability to hear from the department and the FBI.
Okay, let's bring our panel now. Democratic strategist Adrian Elrod and CNN political commentator and Republican consultant John Thomas. We also have criminal defense attorney Brian Claypool with us as well. So, Brian, let's start with you with that Republican memo, which argues the Department of Justice and the FBI misused their authority to obtain a secret surveillance order on the former Trump campaign worker Carter Page. CNN was told it cites the role of Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein and outgoing Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe for their roles in overseeing aspects of the investigation. You know, Rosenstein is believed to have signed off on the continued surveillance of Page. That happened around April last year. So now the president has 5 days to decide if he'll make the memo public. That'll probably happen. Doesn't it basically take blind Freddy at this point to see it's all creating a narrative for Donald Trump to fire Rosenstein and ultimately get rid of Robert Mueller?
Well, John, make no mistake about it. This is a 12-round prize boxing match. In one corner, you've got the FBI, and in the other corner, you've got President Trump. And I think what's happening here with this Nunes memo is that there might be some evidence that there was not enough information to support probable cause for a search warrant on Carter Page, and that's a pretty big violation, John. In other words, in order to get a search warrant to do surveillance on Carter Page, he's a domestic person. He's a U.S. citizen. He's not a foreign agent. So the standard is much higher in order to get a search warrant to do surveillance on him. For example, you have to prove that there is probable cause that he is first a foreign agent, that he is doing something to transmit information to a foreign government, and then you have to show that part of this surveillance, that a significant amount of the information gleaned from the surveillance will lead to credible evidence of Carter Page being a foreign agent. And I really don't think this is like Trump pounding his chest or the Republicans pounding their chest. I think Rod Rosenstein, could be in a heap of trouble if he signed off on this warrant when there was not enough probable cause to support the warrant. And I think this could lead to Trump potentially firing Rosenstein. But, John, here's another problem. If he does that, President Trump is looking in the face of possibly being interviewed by Robert Mueller in this Russian probe investigation. And everybody has been clamoring that Trump is trying to unduly influence that investigation. So if he fires Rosenstein, then this could fuel the argument that he is trying to influence and this Russian probe investigation.
Okay, so John, to you, just to move it forward from Brian's point, some of the reporting out there is that the memo from the Republicans argues the wrongdoing by the FBI is concealing the warrant for surveillance on Carter Page came actually from the Trump-Russia document, the salacious one that had all sorts of accusations in there. Okay, but apart from the allegations which have got a lot of attention about what happened in that Moscow hotel room, that was clearly hasn't been proven. There's also the allegation that Trump lawyer Michael Cohen traveled to Prague in 2013 to meet with a Russian spy or Russian high-ranking official to conspire with. What else in that dossier is actually wrong? Because what it seems is that most of the information in that dossier has borne out to be true.
Yeah, well, I think the challenge is, first of all, who funded the dossier, which was arguably the Clinton. I think it started out with an anti-Trump Republican.
The Washington Free Beacon, which was the anti-Trump
Right,
group,
and then it transferred and finished by the Hillary Clinton campaign, which was then essentially handed over to the FBI. And I think the issue is if they're using Carter Page as an example to get a FISA warrant, the issue here is everybody's saying, oh, well, he just wants Trump wants to fire Mueller, and that's what this is about. But this is really about the politicization of our justice system and our FBI. I mean, this goes well beyond a Trump collusion investigation. I think that's the concern here.
Carter Page was under FBI surveillance all the way back to 2014, long before the campaign began. So I guess we will know more, I guess, in the next couple of days.
I also just don't understand why it's such a big deal to release the memo. I mean, just release it and then we can pick it apart.
Well, why not release it with the Democrat response?
Well, I think...
Well, look, I think some of the concerns about releasing it is the information in the memo factual? Is there classified?
Well, it's cherry-picked, I think, is the accusation.
Right, of course. And, look, the broader picture here, John, is that this is a continuous distraction by the Trump administration to try to deflect from the problems that he has with the Russian investigation. The fact that Mueller is closing in, that we know that Donald Trump is likely going to be interviewed, or at least is going to have some sort of negotiation with his attorneys and with the Mueller investigation, whether it's going to be a written testimony, whether it's going to be some sort of taped process as opposed to an actual in-person interview. But whatever it is, he's getting very nervous about this. And you're seeing his allies in Congress, i.e. Devin Nunes, with this memo, who's trying to shift everybody off the real facts with the Mueller investigation and focus on this memo, which may or may not have proper or correct information in it.
At the very least, why wouldn't the Republicans, if they want to put this memo out there, and they do because they voted for it, why wouldn't you release the Democrat response to avoid all the accusations of politicization?
I'm sure they will at some point. I think because it just does exactly what the Democrats want, which is muddy the waters, which confuse the situation. Release this memo, let us vet it. Let's go through exactly if, in fact, it's clean and the FBI didn't collude essentially with Barack Obama to influence 2016 elections. Wonderful. I hope we clear that up. But we need to clear that up first. And look, one thing we've learned is leaks happen in the last, year we've learned this. That counter memo will get out whether or not the committee releases it.
But I want to just respond to something really quickly. Confuse the situation. You're talking about Republicans or Democrats trying to confuse the situation.
They are.
I mean, Republicans are doing that and have been doing that, especially the Trump administration for the last 3 years.
Okay, well, there's another theory out there that the FBI director, Christopher Wray, who was at the White House over the weekend, he read this memo, and there was something in there so compelling that he was forced to remove Andrew McCabe as his deputy. He made that announcement on Monday morning that he was stepping down early. The White House, though, says it has had nothing to do with McCabe's decision to step down. This is what Sarah Huckabee Sanders said during the briefing.
Can you say definitively then that the president did not play a role in Andrew McCabe stepping down?
Yes, I didn't say the president wasn't part of this decision-making process, and we would refer you to the FBI, where Christopher Wray serves as the director, which, as I said last week, and I'll repeat again today, the president has full confidence in him and has put the decisions at the FBI in his hands.
But the president has made no secret he never liked McCabe. NBC News is reporting Donald Trump was furious that after he fired James Comey, the former FBI director, Comey was allowed to fly home from L.A. on a government plane. Trump then called McCabe, who was at that point the acting director of the FBI. He wanted to know who authorized it.
McCabe told the president he hadn't been asked to authorize Comey's flight, but if anyone had asked, he would have approved it. The president was silent for a moment, then turned on McCabe. Quote, "Ask your wife how it feels to be a loser," Trump said. McCabe replied, "Okay, sir." Trump hung up the phone.
Okay, there was a reference to McCabe's wife and her failed bid for the Virginia State House in 2015. Here's a very quick timeline. What happened after that phone call? In May, McCabe was summoned to the White House by the president, who asked him who he voted for. 2 months after that came a tweet. The acting head of the FBI and the person in charge of the Hillary investigation, Andrew McCabe, got $700,000 from Hillary for wife. The next day, again on Twitter, the president called out his attorney general for not replacing McCabe. By August, Christopher Wray is sworn in, and McCabe is his deputy. Last month, it was reported reported that McCabe was planning to retire in March. 2 months from now, that's when he'd be eligible for a pension. The president repeats the criticism about his wife's campaign finances on Twitter and later adds this: FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe is racing the clock to retire with full benefits, 90 days to go. And of course, just last month, reports the Attorney General was putting pressure on the FBI Director to fire McCabe. So, Brian, to you, yes, the president may not have directly ordered McCabe to be fired, but it seems absurd to say he didn't play a role.
Well, John, I actually don't think he did play a role, but here's the bigger problem for President Trump. Because he's been pounding his chest and he's been jabbing at Andrew McCabe and his wife for the last, 6 months, public perception is going to trump reality in this situation. And I think most people out there are going to think that he did have something to do with McCabe leaving. But leaving early. But here's the irony in this, John, real quick. I mean, I think the FBI actually here is pulling a sneaky maneuver by allowing McCabe to step down now in advance of his retirement. Why? Because there's a memo that we haven't talked about, this memo that's coming out from the Office of Inspector General that is supposed to disparage McCabe immensely in his investigation of Hillary Clinton. And I think that the FBI is trying to preempt any negative feedback from that scandal. And that's why they're letting him go now.
Very quickly, we're almost out of time, but Adrian, I want to get to Hillary Clinton and you know, the story that broke on Friday that she basically covered up an incident of sexual harassment. She protected the accused harasser, you know, gave the person making the accusations a new job, got them out of her 2008 campaign. Her campaign manager was on CNN earlier on Monday. She said basically she investigated it all. She thought there was sexual harassment, but you know, she was overruled by Hillary Clinton. You know, for all the talk about Hillary Clinton empowering women, at the end of the day, actions speak louder than words?
Well, you know, let's take a step back here. Secretary Clinton was not covering this up. This is something that happened 10 years ago on her 2008 campaign. Yeah. I will say this, though. Hindsight is always 20/20. You know, she may have be looking back now and wishing that he had been removed. But what matters the most now is that 10 years later, the environment and the culture is far different than it was 10 years ago. And what might have been considered, you know, standard process at that time, which is, you know, dock the guy's pay a couple weeks, put him in counseling, put the subordinate in a different job that is equal or more advanced than where she was before. And if this happens again, then he's kicked off the campaign. Okay. That is not going to stand today, and that's what matters the most. And what also matters the most is the women who have been victim to him feel comfortable speaking out and sharing their stories to make sure this never happens again. Very
quickly, you know, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but Hillary Clinton had a chance to correct the record, and she put out a tweet. There was no apology. There was no admission of guilt. There was no acceptance.
It's because she lives in a glass house. Look, her husband has been accused of raping and harassing women. Is she going to divorce him? Probably not. She doesn't want to go down that road. She doesn't want to have that conversation. At the same time, she opened up her 2016 campaign saying every woman has a right to be believed. It's very hypocritical. Not the first time a politician's been hypocritical.
She believes it.
So she believes Juanita Broaddrick?
Hypocrisy in politics? Oh my God. There's gambling going on here, I do believe.
No, I want to just make one final point, though. I am really tired of seeing the women always blamed for bad men out there. Okay. So let's move forward as a society and, you know.
A teachable moment.
Embrace the #MeToo movement.
Absolutely.
For what it is.
Adrian, John, and Brian, thanks to all of you. Most appreciated.
Thanks.
Thank you, John.
And be sure to tune